Hey, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Black Forest from Uwe Rosenberg. This is a rapid-fire review, a format where I try to go ahead and give you a general thoughts, opinions, how to play, all of that in 10 minutes or less. And to be very clear, this is going to be very light on the how to play, giving you a general overview, and then of course all my thoughts. Timestamps to everything down below. But with that said, Black Forest is a mid-weight Euro game. It's a kind of an iteration of Glass Road from Uwe Rosenberg, and utilizes a bunch of elements from that game, and from some of the general resource conversion that he's known for. The general idea of the game is on your turn you're going to take your guy and you're going to take an action either in the village that you're in, but you do have to move spaces, and then you're going to activate the two things on either side. Alternatively, you can also go traveling around the board, but to do so you need to pay provisions to move from spot to spot, and you also need to pay if you go to a village where somebody else is there, giving them a resource. Then you activate the two spots on either side of your person. That's the core idea. These various locations are going to start up on the game in a slightly randomized setup, but then also there's going to be ways to move things around during the game as well through the traveling merchant, but you're basically trying to activate a variety of locations in order to help your engine and score points. What is it that you're trying to do though? Well, there's a few things, but the main things you're trying to do are building buildings and getting animals into pastures. Buildings are going to come from the public displays over here. We have a bunch of buildings, we have our more point-focused endgame buildings, and these are going to give you points in the top right corner, but they also give you abilities, either ongoing conversion abilities, whenever something happens abilities, one-time use abilities, or point scoring abilities for these colors here. The color kind of tells you what they're doing. But those buildings are both going to help you in-game most of the time, but they're also going to give you points endgame, so they're very helpful to get your hands on, but you need resources, all the resources shown on the side, in order to get them. That's where we come to your little personal board over here, where you're working on your resource optimization puzzle. As you gather various resources from various spots, trading in things for other things, you'll be moving things around on your board, and then converting resources and gaining resources that you'll use to be able to go ahead and buy the various buildings you need. That's the building side of things. Animals are going to follow a similar structure, but you're going to need pastures to score your animals. There's a few ways to score animals, but they only score for being in pastures, which means you need to find the location that's going to help you build pastures. That's going to be this one over here, but there are other ways from buildings on the board to get pastures as well. And then once you do that, you have to find a way to go ahead and get animals. Here's a great spot over here, but there's a lot of spots that will give you animals, and again, buildings can help as well, and then getting those animals into pastures. Ultimately, the core game comes down to a giant resource conversion game. You have to try to take advantage of the resources you have. You have to try to find patterns amongst the tiles, find patterns amongst the buildings, and all together try to figure out the best way for you to achieve everything you need before game end is triggered, which, without getting too much into it, happens as one of these dials gets too far along the board. This is a very light overview of how to play the game. There's a whole lot we're not getting into. This is trying to give you a general idea. And with that, we can dive into the rapid fire review part, starting off with the first question that's always part of this review format. Am I keeping the game? Yes, absolutely. Black Forest is delightful, which brings us to the why or why not. Well, there's a whole bunch of reasons why I'm keeping it, but ultimately it comes down to the fact that this gives you a mid-weight Euro experience that is incredibly crunchy, highly variable, and generally delivers a playtime in the 2 hours or less range. You can have games that go even as short as an hour, although I haven't had quite that short yet. I've had the 90-minute range. You can have games crawl a little bit as well, especially if players aren't moving their dials, but I'd say you can generally get a very good experience in the 2 hour range, even when playing at a full 4-player complement. There's a lot of Euro games in this weight class. I find I tend to shy away from 4 players as it adds another player, but adds more downtime and it's not a good enough of an experience. Black Forest is one that, while my preferred player count is still 3, 4 is still a way that I'll happily play it, as with 2 as well, even though there is a 2-player kind of extra things you have to do for a 2-player game, and solo I haven't played it yet. But past the general idea of just being a good mid-weight Euro that gives you a good experience in a crunchy time, there's a whole lot going on here. These buildings are going to give you a ton of ways of building out your combos. The variability of the initial placement, as well as how the board iterates, means you're constantly juggling as to what the ideal move structure is to minimize your use of resources, or at least your use of unnecessary resources, while trying to figure out your best conversions. Gathering the right complement of buildings, especially these conversion buildings, they're key to your victory, and trying to figure out how to build something that's going to give you a lot of something, and then having buildings that let you turn that something into something else, and constantly feeding that towards a loop of gathering more and more as you build out your player boards. You're going to start with this player board over here. You can add more to it through adding these over here, but there's a whole process to be able to do that. There's so much combo-tastic goodness in this game, and it's also highly variable. Every single one of these buildings over here is double-sided, and in a typical game, you're going to start by flipping half of them, any random combination of them, to the other side and having a different ability in play. That means you're not going to have your rote set of, hey, this is the ideal strategy, you get this building and that building, past the fact that other players are going to be taking buildings from you as you try to build them. The amount of times you're playing this game and you're working your way towards one building, only to have one person take that building from you, it's going to happen all the time in the game. But past the fact that you can't work your way towards your perfect combo because of that, you also can't because every game is going to be a different combination of which buildings are in play, allowing you to explore new ways to optimize around how everything is going to be ideal. So it's relatively fast playing for the experience you get, highly variable, lots of decision space, every single thing you do matters, very crunchy, and all in all delivers a very solid experience. We haven't even talked about jobs. These add a nice degree of in-game variety as they start to come out, giving you these surprises that you get to focus on, that forced you to pivot from your current strategy because it only just showed up on the board and you have to decide whether it's worth that trade-off. There's a lot of in-game pivoting past the fact that you're going to work your way towards these ideal goals. You'll have things you're working your way towards, but there's a lots of adjusting to the board state, to where players are, to the jobs that came out, to the buildings that have been bought. There's a lot of thinking on the fly that makes it a very satisfying experience. As far as other similar games to check out, I already mentioned this is kind of a version of Glass Road, so definitely check out Glass Road. If you like the things this game does, it kind of builds upon the same framework while doing it in a very different way. So check out Glass Road if you want to see something, well, similar but very different from Black Forest. Additionally, this kind of feels a little reminiscent of Ora et Labora. I find that Le Havre and Ora et Labora are very similar games from Uwe Rosenberg. Le Havre tends to get the spotlight a bit more, but Ora et Labora is one that is also excellent, and there's elements of like the boards you're playing with over here, your personal domains, that definitely felt very reminiscent of that as well, so check that one out too if you're looking for another similar, somewhat forgotten Uwe Rosenberg experience. As far as my counter opinion, why might this game not be for you? Well, first of all, I mentioned the combo-tastic goodness that's present, but that also can be a bad thing. You will have times where players have a combo where they got a combination of buildings, but they may not have gotten all those buildings in one game, but in this game they did. They got these 3 buildings that work together, and they have this little engine, and they just have things working towards them in a way that other players are watching from the sidelines, feeling unable to keep up. When a player finds a good combo, if other players haven't gotten in the way of that combo, it can sometimes feel like you're playing at a bit of a disadvantage. The end game can surprise you in this game. Sometimes you're playing the game, working your way towards your plan, and you need 5 more turns to execute it, and somebody else triggers end game, and now you have 1 more turn to execute your plan, and otherwise you won't see the full payoff off of everything you're doing. And so it has that element too that might be slightly souring at the end of a 2-hour-long game. It's easy to get laser focused on specific things you're trying to do. In fact, I recommend it. I recommend getting laser focused on something you're trying to do and then work your way towards that, because it's a good way of not getting too lost in all the stuff that's happening here. But that also means that sometimes you do that, you get to the end of the game and you're like, the thing you laser focused on just gave less points than the things other players did instead. So it's not always clear how well you're doing as you're building up that combos. I don't mind that because I'm just having fun working on my own things, but some players certainly might. At the end of the day, it's a mid-weight, medium to heavy resource conversion puzzle, and if that's not your jam, that's just not your jam. As far as final thoughts on Black Forest, this one is delightful. I like a lot of Uwe Rosenberg games, and especially ones that feel like this. I like Le Havre, I like Ora et Labora, I love Glass Road, I love Feast for Odin, like the overwhelmingness of buildings and all these things here. If you play games like Caverna, just having a smorgasbord of stuff to work your way towards, this can be overwhelming but also incredibly satisfying at the same time. For me, this delivers on exactly the kind of Uwe Rosenberg experience that I like best. A lot of decision space, a lot of variability, a lot of focusing and adjusting around how things are happening based on your own engine and based on the way other players are getting in your way. And to me, it's an excellent game, coming in at a 4.5 out of 5. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this review helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.